So, do you think it's too expensive to retire in Florida? Think you can't do it on your Social Security? Well, what if I told you you could move down there and retire comfortably for around $30,000 a month or less? Yeah, I got some recent data here that I did some research on and found because I got a lot of comments that Florida's too expensive. How can you afford to retire there? So I did some research, found these areas, and they've got a really high favorability rating based on um, affordability for rent, groceries, utilities, and access to medical care and the expenses that go along with it. So these are, and they have, most of them have a decent population of retired folks so that you have other people in your community that are similar to. All right. So I want to start out with the first one. And again, this is all costs combined. So 3,000 a month or less. Okay. Number 10 is our most expensive. It is Panama City. The monthly expenses there run on average of $2,966. That's everything included. 18% of their community is 65 or older. And you can handle these essentials under your Social Security. That's where the $3,000 came into, because that's a pretty decent average for most married or singles that have to rely on just Social Security. Okay, number 9, Cocoa. The monthly expenditures there run around $29.91. The population of people over 65 are 20%. And the healthcare costs are around $585, which is right about the national average. Moving on to number 8, Pensacola. Pretty common name. Now, there's a reason that Florida was a retirement center and retirement hub years before now, because it's got great weather and active communities, and it's very popular if you just want to snowbird, which is where you live half your time here, half your time there. But Pensacola is one of those places that was grown out of snowbirding to begin with. So it's very popular because of that. Monthly expenses there for rent. Now let me clear this part up too. The rent is for a 1-bedroom unit. Obviously, if you want 2 bedrooms, your costs are going to go up. But the fact that you can get in and rent and pay all your utilities, food, and medical for under $3,000 a month is what makes these areas appealing. Pensacola's average is 2,840. 19.5% of the population is 65 or older. Their average rent is running $1,559, which is $428 below the national average. And groceries are also $362 on average a month, which is also below the national average. So that makes Pensacola a great choice. Moving on, number 7, D-Land. And I could be mispronouncing some of these words. It might be DeLand, D-Land, whatever. The monthly expenses down there run $2,932. 20% of the population is over 65. Their health care costs and monthly utilities cost a little bit above average, but still well within the $3,000 a month or less limit. Number 6, Bartow. And just to clear this up too, a lot of these places are on the Atlantic Sea side of Florida versus the Gulf side. The Gulf side tends to be more expensive, so most of your affordable places are not going to be necessarily be on the Gulf side, but it's not impossible. Okay, Bartow is kind of like around the Orlando area, it seems, if I remember right. I don't know where all of these are exactly. I saw a map of them at the time. So your average expenses are going to be $2,946. 15% of the population is 65. Their rent is an average of $357 lower per month than the national average. And it's coming in somewhere around $1,630. Now, when I looked up some of these areas, the monthly rent for a 1-bedroom was running on average between $1,400 and $1,500 a month. Basing on national averages versus this average is a little bit off because there's so many states that are very expensive that it skews numbers, right? Like we've talked about before, between median and finding average. So keep that into consideration. All right, number 5, Inverness, $2,920 a month. 39% approximately are 65 and over. Their rent is averaging around $1,617 a month, more than $300 below the national average, but the utilities are a little bit more expensive than the average. So take that into consideration, but it's still, these are not necessarily in order of price difference coming down. Just in general, it's an order of the overall favorability score for these areas, okay? Taking all those things into account: rent, groceries, some healthcare, and amount of people that were 65 and older. Number 4, Titusville, which is over on the East Coast for sure. It's somewhere near the Space Center over there. Monthly expenses are around $2,933 a month. 22% of the people are over 65. and all of their expenditures are below the national average, including healthcare, which is great. Number 3 is Eustis. Comes in at an average of $29.50 a month. The percentage of 65 and older is 19.6%, is averaging somewhere around 1646, which is about 300 below. Groceries, healthcare, and utilities are a bit higher than the average, however. So that's why, but you're still in the rent offsets what you're paying extra for the other things. So it's still in the number 3 because it's a pretty good value. It's still under $3,000 a month. Number 2, Milton. Milton's average monthly expenses are coming in at $29.32. 15% of the people are over 65, and the expenses for utilities are about $25 above national average, but the rent is $16.42, which is $300 or so below the rest of the nation in cost. Again, all these things are based on the 4 or 5 criteria of rent, feed, costs, grocery expenses, utilities, and healthcare and access to healthcare. All these are great areas if you are older for the healthcare specifically. Florida is a mecca of healthcare. I can tell you that between medical services, car washes, and places to store your stuff that you can't fit in your unit, they're on every corner. Kind of like a Starbucks or a McDonald's is in other areas. Down there, they put up gas stations, car washes, utility storage areas, and hospital services on every other corner. It's crazy. And they can get them up in, what appears to be 90 days, because I visit every few weeks, and every time we drive by a gas station that was in process, it's like almost done. The next time I go down, it'll be done. And then there'll be a hospital started across the street. So a lot of good things going on there. All right, on to number 1. I know you've been waiting for this one. Lake Wales. Lake Wales comes in with the lowest expenses overall at $27.51. 27% of their people are 65 and older. They have the lowest overall monthly expenditures, which is $500 below the national average. And the rent is the lowest on the list at $1,430 a month. Pretty cheap. Now, where we are at in Florida, in a northern suburb of Tampa, and I say just outside of northern suburbs, really, but we're considered a northern suburb of Tampa, a 1-bedroom, which will run around $1,500 a month, depending on which building you're in, what view you have. Prices go up if you take a higher floor, lower floor. Those things affect those prices, but $1,500 a month is right around that's why I say that the average is skewed by the national, because California, it's crazy expensive to rent in California, even a 1-bedroom. So considering, I can tell you up here in Northern Illinois, my son pays about $1,300 a month for a small 2-bedroom, very small. Like the second bedroom is not really a bedroom; it's very small. So when you can get 900 or so square foot for a 1-bedroom, the 2-bedroom we rent is almost 1,200 square foot, which is a decent size. To get into those kinds of numbers at $1,500 for a 1 and $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom, with all in, including utilities and everything for the most part, that's pretty good pricing. So anyway, yes, it is possible to live in Florida for just on your Social Security. It is possible to live there for $3,000 a month or less. If you control your expenses, like I've always tried to talk about on this channel, if you control your expenses, know what your budget is, and stay within your budget, you can afford to live just about anywhere. I don't want to say anywhere, because again, some places are just out of reach for anybody, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to have to be a millionaire, and you don't have to be a millionaire to retire. Okay? If you have decent Social Security income, if you have a decent amount of money coming from a 401k that'll last you 20 years, you take those 2 numbers and you figure out, this is what I can afford. Where can I live? Do I have to stay in crappy weather, or can I go to someplace warm? And of course, there's lots of sunny states to move to that may be more affordable than Florida. But I want to talk about Florida specific today because it comes up a lot in my comments that Florida's too expensive to live in, etc. So here's 10 examples. I got these just the other day with some fresh research between Redfin and using AARP and a couple other sites that came up with some of these numbers. So this is not me just pulling stuff out of a magic hat. These are real live numbers that make a difference. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the content. As always, leave a comment or a like. Appreciate your time. See you on the next one.